Hey guys, Michael here. Hope that you're all doing great today. So, in light of the fact that I have made a couple of videos very recently that were talking about some of the issues going on with this game, Warhammer 3, that is, of course, I thought I would go ahead and make this short video, which is going to be basically my reaction to the latest hotfix. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you are already familiar with this hotfix. I know I'm not the only Warhammer channel that most of you watch, and obviously there have been other people who have reported this. So I'm not going to go through in any detail, not that there really is very much detail here about this particular hotfix, but okay, so they're addressing the AI for the Lizardmen and Tomb Kings, which is great. You know, definitely something that needed to happen. Something that they never should have said, "Oh, we're going to hold off until the 7.0 to fix that," because this is the kind of thing that, quite frankly, should have been caught before they did the release the rework to the rest of us. Again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I've already criticized. I do think that they need to make some changes to their entire development and QA processes to catch things like this before they go live. But I do want to talk a little bit about, I guess I want to give them some credit and still also provide a little bit of criticism at the same time when it comes to this. I don't think this really changes anything that I've said in the recent videos. I think it's good that they're providing some support for a game that is this old. At the same time, I feel like they have to because they're still releasing new content, and with the expectation that people are going to pay for the aforementioned new content, there has to be, there's sort of like, there's a sort of like a pact, an agreement that takes place between your consumers and your publishers, that we are buying this game with the expectation that it's going to be supported in a particular way, and they have not always lived up to that expectation. But I'm going to give them some credit for at times having recognized that maybe they haven't lived up to it and improving those processes. So I guess what I'm getting at here is I feel like they are acknowledging the need for a hot fix. They're getting it out sooner than they had originally communicated, and we do need to acknowledge that. So that is a step in the right direction. I am hopeful, but we do not yet know, how this is going to impact their processes moving forward. Does this mean the fact that they've taken kind of another black eye, just like they did after the Shadows of Change DLC, where their reaction to that was to really turn around and improve their design and their communication to the point where they ended up releasing the best of any of the DLCs. We don't know whether or not that's going to be the case, but I am hopeful that that will be the case, that they look at what's happened here, both in terms of how this egregious mistake got into the game and also how they handled it at first. And hopefully they are doing some things internally that we're just not familiar with to address those particular problems, and hopefully reduce the likelihood of them happening again. I don't want to be so naive as to suggest that there will never be any bugs that are released in any future hotfixes or reworks or DLCs or anything like that. We do know in this day and age of game development that's just not realistic, but there are, I think, incremental improvements that could happen in their processes, and I hope that they're taking it. Having said all that, so I do want to acknowledge the good here. I also want to criticize a little bit of this and their previous communication. I mean, I guess maybe they feel like people demand a little bit of transparency into what went wrong. I know when I worked in IT, and granted, it has been a little while now since I've worked in IT. I worked in IT for a decade. We would have never gone into any detail of an explanation about a bug that crept into the live version of the software that or the systems that we were developing. It was not our responsibility to teach our consumers, our customers, our users enough about programming for it to make sense what went wrong, but rather to basically just reassure them that we have fixed it and we have also learned from it and are making sure that it's not going to happen again. And that is, unfortunately, that's the prism through which I view these types of communication, and that seems to be missing to me. I would feel better about this communication, not if they said, oh, well, here's exactly what was happening where the AI wasn't properly recruiting such and such, or, is misinterpreting, or it wasn't taking into consideration, such and such variables. I would rather not get any of that information and instead just be told, we've identified what the problem was and we are learning from it, and we are going to make sure that our quality assurance process is going to stop that from happening in the future, or these types of problems to happen in the future. So I'm not exactly all that comforted from this communication, because I don't really see any acknowledgement or inference that that CA's quality assurance processes are going to change at all. This is just sort of like, oh, thanks for calling our attention to this problem. Yeah, this is what happened, and here, we're going to go ahead and fix it for you. I would rather see something a little bit long-term or even short-term in terms of reassuring that this is just not going to happen again and again and again, which unfortunately, that's kind of what we've been led, we have learned to expect at this point in this game. Having said all that, as always, I've got the obligatory, I still think it's a really good game, still a ton of fun in a lot of different ways. I just was a little disappointed by this communication, because I do think it's a missed opportunity here for them to reassure us that that they're going to do something internally to make sure that these sorts of things don't continue to happen. And if those things don't, if they're really not planning on changing anything internally, then that's quite disappointing to me, because I'm afraid that these problems are going to continue to keep popping up. But anyway, let me know what you all think. I don't want to be a doom and gloomer here. To me, this doesn't sound like doom and gloom, but I know that different people are going to hear this and probably think that it is. I don't want to completely bash them. I think they've gotten bashed enough, and I try to give credit where credit is due, and I do think that there is some credit that they deserve for continuing to fix these things, and in this case, recognizing that this needed to become a higher priority and get much fixed much faster, much sooner than they originally intended. So again, little bit of credit where credit is due. It's just overall, I wish I had heard more than just what we're getting right here. So, and I know that there's another communication that they did, but again, it doesn't really have what I was looking for in it. So, all right. Anyway, again, as always, I appreciate the feedback that people give. I don't want to say talk me down from the edge, because I'm not really on the edge, but do let me know if you think I'm mistaken in my interpretation, if I'm, really not giving them enough credit, or, this is, maybe not as big of a deal as I'm making it sound like. But anyway, I don't want to make this video any longer than it needs to be, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. I do look forward to hearing some of your feedback, and as always, I really appreciate you watching and listening, and I will see you all in the next video.